It was a dark and stormy night. Detective James Carter was driving to the scene of a murder in a remote mansion. He had received a phone call from the local police who said they needed his help to solve the case. The victim was a wealthy businessman named Richard Blackwood, who had been found dead in his study with a bullet wound in his chest. The only suspects were the 6 guests who had been invited to spend the weekend at the mansion: Blackwood's wife, his brother, his lawyer, his secretary, his best friend, and his mistress. Carter wondered who among them had a motive to kill Blackwood, and how they had managed to do it without being seen or heard by anyone else. Carter arrived at the mansion and was greeted by a nervous-looking policeman. He showed him his badge and asked to see the body. The policeman led him to the study, where a yellow tape marked the crime scene. Carter entered the room and saw Blackwood's corpse lying on a leather sofa. He had a neat hole in his chest, where the bullet had entered. There was no sign of a struggle or a weapon. Carter noticed a book on the floor next to the sofa. It was a copy of The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. Carter picked it up and opened it. He saw a handwritten note on the first page. It read, "To Richard, from your secret admirer. Hope you enjoy this classic mystery. XOXO." Carter frowned. Who was Blackwood's secret admirer, and what did they have to do with his death? Carter decided to question the suspects. He asked the policeman to gather them in the living room. He walked out of the study and saw a group of people sitting on a couch. They looked tense and scared. Carter introduced himself and explained that he was there to investigate the murder. He asked them to tell him their names and their relationship with Blackwood. The first one to speak was a blonde woman in a red dress. She said her name was Laura Blackwood, and she was the victim's wife. She said they had been married for 10 years, and they had a happy marriage. She said she loved her husband, and had no reason to kill him. She said she was in her bedroom when she heard the gunshot. She ran downstairs and saw him dead on the sofa. She screamed and called the police. Carter nodded and moved on to the next suspect. He was a tall man in a suit. He said his name was Robert Blackwood and he was the victim's brother. He said they had a good relationship and they often did business together. He said he was in the library when he heard the gunshot. He ran to the study and saw his brother lying on the sofa. He checked his pulse and realized he was dead. He tried to calm his sister-in-law and waited for the police to arrive. Carter nodded and moved on to the next suspect. He was a bald man in glasses. He said his name was Martin Jones, and he was the victim's lawyer. He said he had been working with Blackwood for 5 years, and they had a professional relationship. He said he was in the dining room when he heard the gunshot. He ran to the study and saw Blackwood's body on the sofa. He noticed the book on the floor and picked it up. He saw the note and read it aloud. He said he didn't know who wrote it or what it meant. He put the book back on the floor and waited for the police to arrive. Carter moved on to the next suspect. She was a brunette woman in a skirt suit. She said her name was Alice Smith, and she was the victim's secretary. She said she had been working with Blackwood for 3 years, and they had a friendly relationship. She said she was in the kitchen when she heard the gunshot. She ran to the study and saw Blackwood's body on the sofa. She saw the book on the floor and recognized it as one of Blackwood's favorites. She said he loved mystery novels and often read them in his spare time. She said she didn't know who wrote the note or what it meant. She waited for the police to arrive. Carter nodded and moved on to the next suspect. He was a muscular man in a leather jacket. He said his name was Jack Wilson, and he was the victim's best friend. He said they had known each other since college, and they had a close relationship. He said he was in the game room when he heard the gunshot. He ran to the study and saw Blackwood's body on the sofa. He saw the book on the floor and wondered who gave it to him. He said he didn't know who wrote the note or what it meant. He waited for the police to arrive. Carter nodded and moved on to the last suspect. She was a blonde woman in a black dress. She said her name was Nicole Davis, and she was the victim's mistress. She said they had been having an affair for 6 months, and they had a passionate relationship. She said she was in the guest room when she heard the gunshot. She ran to the study and saw Blackwood's body on the sofa. She saw the book on the floor and realized it was from her. She said she gave it to him as a gift because she knew he liked mystery novels. She said she wrote the note as a sign of her love for him. She said she didn't kill him, and she loved him more than anyone else. Carter listened to all the suspects and tried to find inconsistencies in their stories. He noticed that none of them had an alibi that could be verified by anyone else. They all claimed to be in different rooms when they heard the gunshot. He wondered if any of them had a motive to kill Blackwood. He asked them about their financial situation and found out that Blackwood was a very rich man who had a lot of assets and properties. He asked them if they knew about his will, and found out that Blackwood had not made one yet. He said he was planning to do it soon, and he had asked his lawyer to prepare it. He said he wanted to leave everything to his wife, except for a small amount to his brother and his best friend. He said he didn't want to leave anything to his secretary or his mistress. Carter wondered if this could be a reason for someone to kill him before he made his will. He asked them if they knew about his affairs, and found out that everyone except for his wife knew about Nicole. They said they didn't approve of his cheating, but they didn't interfere with his personal life. They said they didn't know if he had any other lovers besides Nicole. Carter wondered if this could be another reason for someone to kill him out of jealousy or revenge. He asked them if they had any enemies, and found out that Blackwood was a very successful businessman who had made a lot of rivals and competitors in his field. They said he had received some threats and warnings from some of them, but he didn't take them seriously. They said he was confident and fearless, and he didn't let anyone intimidate him. Carter wondered if this could be another reason for someone to kill him out of hatred or envy. Carter decided to examine the crime scene more closely. He asked the policeman to seal off the study and not let anyone in or out. He went back to the room and looked around. He saw a large window that faced the garden. He wondered if the killer could have shot Blackwood from outside. He opened the window and saw a small hole in the glass. He realized that the bullet had gone through the window and hit Blackwood in the chest. He looked outside and saw a large tree near the window. He wondered if the killer could have climbed the tree and used it as a vantage point. He went outside and inspected the tree. He saw some footprints on the ground and some broken branches on the tree. He realized that someone had indeed climbed the tree and used it to shoot Blackwood. He looked around and saw a trail of footprints leading away from the tree. He followed them and saw that they ended at a fence that surrounded the mansion. He saw a small hole in the fence that was big enough for someone to crawl through. He realized that the killer had escaped through the hole and fled the scene. He wondered who could have done it and why. Carter decided to confront the suspects with his findings. He asked the policeman to bring them back to the living room. He told them that he had discovered how the killer had shot Blackwood and escaped. He said that the killer had climbed a tree near the window and used a silenced gun to shoot Blackwood through the glass. He said that the killer had then climbed down the tree and crawled through a hole in the fence and ran away. He said that he had found footprints and broken branches that proved his theory. He asked them if they had any idea who could have done it and why. The suspects looked shocked and confused. They said they didn't know anyone who could have done such a thing. They said they didn't hear any gunshot or see anyone outside. They said they were all in different rooms when it happened. Carter said he didn't believe them. He said he thought one of them was lying and was the killer. He said he had a way to prove it. He said he had found a piece of evidence that linked the killer to the crime. He said he had found it in the study, next to Blackwood's body. He said he was going to reveal it now and expose the killer. Carter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. He held it up and showed it to the suspects. It was a silver pendant with the letter N engraved on it. He said it was the piece of evidence that he had found. He said it belonged to the killer. He said he had found it on the floor next to Blackwood's body. He said it must have fallen off the killer's neck when they shot Blackwood. He said it was a unique pendant that only one person in the room had. He said he had seen it before on their neck. He said he knew who the killer was. He pointed at Nicole and said she was the killer. He said she had killed Blackwood because he didn't want to leave his wife for her. He said she had given him the book as a gift and wrote the note as a sign of her love. He said she had then climbed the tree and shot him through the window. He said she had then escaped through the hole in the fence and pretended to be in the guest room when it happened. He said she had lied about everything and tried to fool him. He said he had caught her and proved her guilt. He asked her to confess and admit her crime. Nicole gasped and looked at Carter with horror. She denied everything and said he was wrong. She said she didn't kill Blackwood and she loved him. She said she didn't know how the pendant got there and she didn't own it. She said it was a mistake and a coincidence. She said she was innocent and begged him to believe her. Carter shook his head and said he didn't believe her. He said he had enough evidence and motive to arrest her. He said he was going to call for backup and take her to the station. He said he had solved the mystery and caught the killer. He said it was over. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. He asked for backup and told them his location. He said he had a suspect in custody and needed a car to take her away. He hung up and looked at Nicole. He told her to stand up and put her hands behind her back. He took out his handcuffs and approached her. Nicole looked at him with fear and anger. She said he was making a mistake and she would prove him wrong. She said she would never forgive him for what he did to her. She said he would regret it. She suddenly lunged at him and tried to grab his gun. Carter reacted quickly and pushed her away. He aimed his gun at her and told her to stop resisting. He said he would shoot if she tried anything else. Nicole glared at him and spat at him. She said he was a fool, and he had missed something important. She said there was another clue that he had overlooked. She said it would change everything and reveal the truth. She said it was in the book that she gave to Blackwood. She said he should look at it again and see for himself. Nicole said the other clue was in the book that she gave to Blackwood. She said it was a hidden message that only he could understand. She said it was a code that they used to communicate with each other. She said it was a way of telling him that she had a surprise for him. She said it was a way of telling him that she had a plan to run away with him. She said it was a way of telling him that she had killed his wife. Carter was stunned by Nicole's words. He wondered if she was telling the truth or lying. He wondered if there was really a hidden message in the book, or if it was a trick. He wondered if he had made a mistake, or if he had solved the mystery. He decided to look at the book again and see for himself. He asked the policeman to watch Nicole and make sure she didn't escape. He ran to the study and grabbed the book from the floor. He opened it and looked at the first page. He saw the note that Nicole had written to Blackwood. It read, "To Richard, from your secret admirer. Hope you enjoy this classic mystery. XOXO." Carter read it again and tried to find a hidden message. He noticed that some of the letters were capitalized and some were not. He wondered if that was a clue. He wrote down the capitalized letters on a piece of paper. He got TRFYSXO. He looked at them and tried to make sense of them. He realized that they were an anagram of something else. He rearranged them and got FRYSTOX. He looked at them and tried to figure out what they meant. He realized that they were a code for something else. He remembered that Nicole had said they used a code to communicate with each other. He wondered what kind of code it was. He thought about it and had an idea. He remembered that Blackwood loved mystery novels and often read them in his spare time. He wondered if he and Nicole used a code based on mystery novels. He wondered if they used a code based on The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. He wondered if they used a code based on the names of the characters in the book. He opened the book and looked at the list of characters. He saw that there were 8 main characters in the book: Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, Sir Henry Baskerville, Dr. Mortimer, Mr. Stapleton, Miss Stapleton, Mr. Frankland, and Mr. Barrymore. He looked at their names and tried to match them with the letters in the code. He realized that each letter in the code corresponded to the first letter of one of the characters' names. He decoded the message and got Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, Sir Henry Baskerville, Mr. Stapleton, Miss Stapleton, Mr. Frankland, Mr. Barrymore, and Dr. Mortimer. He looked at them and tried to understand what they meant. He realized that they were a sequence of events that Nicole had planned for Blackwood. Carter decoded the sequence of events and realized what Nicole had done. He understood that she had used the names of the characters in the book to tell Blackwood her plan. He understood that she had used Sherlock Holmes to mean that she had found out something important. He understood that she had used Dr. Watson to mean that she had told him about it. He understood that she had used Sir Henry Baskerville to mean that she had killed his wife. He understood that she had used Mr. Stapleton to mean that she had made it look like an accident. He understood that she had used Miss Stapleton to mean that she had pretended to be sad and innocent. He understood that she had used Mr. Franklin to mean that she had invited him to the mansion. He understood that she had used Mr. Barrymore to mean that she had prepared a surprise for him. He understood that she had used Dr. Mortimer to mean that she had killed him too. Carter realized that Nicole was a cold-blooded murderer who had killed Blackwood and his wife for her own selfish reasons. He realized that he had solved the mystery and caught the killer. He realized that he had to arrest her and take her to justice. He ran back to the living room and saw Nicole sitting on the couch. She looked at him and smiled. She said she knew he would figure it out. She said she was proud of him and his detective skills. She said she loved him and wanted to be with him. She said she did it all for him and hoped he would appreciate it. She said they could run away together and start a new life. She said they could be happy and free. She said they could be like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, solving mysteries and having adventures. She said they could be like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, killing people and having fun. She said they could be like Bonnie and Clyde, robbing banks and escaping the law. She said they could be anything they wanted to be. She reached for his hand and asked him to join her. Carter looked at Nicole and felt a mix of emotions. He felt anger and disgust for what she had done. He felt shock and disbelief for what she had said. He felt pity and sadness for what she had become. He felt fear and temptation for what she had offered. He felt love and hate for who she was. He remembered that he had met her a year ago at a crime scene. He remembered that he had been attracted to her beauty and charm. He remembered that he had flirted with her and asked her out. He remembered that he had dated her and fallen in love with her. He remembered that he had cheated on his wife with her and lied to everyone about it. He remembered that he had planned to leave his wife for her and start a new life with her. He remembered that he had been happy and excited about it, but he did not recognize her because of the plastic surgery she had. He remembered that he had been wrong and stupid about it. He realized that Nicole was not who he thought she was. He realized that Nicole was a psychopath who had manipulated him and used him. He realized that Nicole was a killer who had murdered his wife and his lover. He realized that Nicole was a monster who had ruined his life and his career. He realized that Nicole was a nightmare who had betrayed him and hurt him. He realized that he had to end it and stop her. He pulled his hand away and shook his head. He told her that he didn't love her and he didn't want to be with her. He told her that he hated her and he wanted to arrest her. He told her that she was crazy and she needed help. He told her that it was over and she had lost. He reached for his handcuffs and tried to cuff her. Nicole looked at him and felt a mix of emotions. She felt love and hate for who he was. She felt anger and disappointment for what he had done. She felt shock and disbelief for what he had said. She felt pity and contempt for what he had become. She felt fear and excitement for what he had offered. She felt lust and revenge for what she wanted to do. She realized that Carter was not who she thought he was. She realized that Carter was a fool who had resisted her and betrayed her. She realized that Carter was a coward who had rejected her and hurt her. She realized that Carter was a loser who had ruined her life and her career. She realized that Carter was a nightmare who had exposed her and caught her. She realized that she had to end it and stop him. She pushed his hand away and shook her head. She told him that she loved him and she wanted to be with him. She told him that he hated her and he wanted to arrest her. She told him that he was crazy and he needed help. She told him that it was not over and she had not lost. She reached for his gun and tried to grab it. Carter looked at her and felt a mix of emotions. He felt love and hate for who she was. Carter and Nicole struggled for the gun. They both tried to pull it away from each other. They both tried to point it at each other. They both tried to pull the trigger. They both heard a gunshot. They both felt pain. They both fell to the floor. They both looked at each other. They both saw blood. They both saw fear. They both saw love. They both saw hate. They both said sorry. They both said goodbye. They both closed their eyes. They both died.